Welcome to World of Warcraft. What's next?
BlizzCon! Hello once again. It's been so long. All right. I love you all too. This is the best. Shadowlands. Like Diablo 4, we can finally say it out loud. And this is the time to tell you a bit more about where we're going and what is next in World of Warcraft. So, last time on World of Warcraft, this happened. The sky shattered, and we are left staring across the veil between life and death into a small piece of the Shadowlands. Well, what does that mean for us exactly? So, this panel is going to be a little bit different from some of the past expansion What's Next panels, because this isn't one of those expansions where it's like, okay, we are getting on a ship and sailing off to this new continent that's part of Azeroth that map makers have mysteriously ignored for the last 10 years. We are going to another plane of existence, effectively. We are going to the realm of death, to the afterlife. And so I need to also lay out some of the ground rules for how this whole place works, so bear with me, and then we'll put it all together at the end. There's a couple things where I'm going to gloss over some details because we have a deep dive panel tomorrow where a few of my colleagues are going to go much more in depth on some of the features and systems. Anyway, let's get going. So, for the lore nerds out in the crowd, you may recognize this, the Warcraft cosmology, which lays out the 6 primal forces that define the Warcraft universe. We have light and shadow, order and disorder, and yes, life and death. And so where and what is the Shadowlands? It's right there. It's been right there in front of us this whole time, just on the edge of reality, separated from us by this veil that has shattered. And that's where we're going. So, to kick things off, let's talk about, some light topics like what happens to us after we die. In Azeroth or other worlds of Warcraft, anyway. So, when death comes, a soul crosses between life and death. Spirit Healer makes that determination, and a winged bearer comes to bring the soul into the Shadowlands. And souls come before a mysterious entity, an ancient entity, known only as the Arbiter. The Arbiter, since time immemorial, has functioned in this capacity. And when that soul comes before her, in a fraction of a second, every one of the contents of that soul is laid bare before her. All the deeds, the misdeeds, the thoughts, the aspirations, the triumphs, and the failures are felt, absorbed, and understood by the Arbiter. And the Arbiter sends that soul off to a destination realm, to one of the infinite realms of the Shadowlands, each one of which is ruled over by a powerful covenant, a ruling force within the Shadowlands. Also, and this will matter more in a second, but each soul brings with it a powerful source of energy known as anima. This is a vital force that is the product of all of that soul's experiences, all that they have done in life. Great souls, whether for good or for evil, have a lot of anima, and ones who've lived smaller, more humble lives have less. But folks like Varian, Garrosh, certainly Arthas, the former Lich King, they had a ton. And anima is the mana. It is ironically, the lifeblood of the Shadowlands. In this land of death, it's the force that makes the trees here grow and rivers flow. It's the source that's drawn upon to conduct the magic of death, and much more. And that's going to be essential to understanding this world. So as I mentioned, the Shadowlands has infinite realms, but our journey initially will focus on a few of them. We see Revendreth, Ardenweald, Bastion, and Maldraxxus as 4 major realms. Oribos, a city which stands in the center of it all, and this mysterious region known only as the Maw. Let's start talking about them. So first off, Bastion. Now, for each of these zones, I'm going to start by showing a piece of our internal concept art that helped define the look and the feel of the zone, and then we'll see how that turned into reality within the game. So this piece, which I'm sure you're all seeing for the very first time ever as an exclusive part of BlizzCon, reflects our artist's early take on the splendor of Bastion. Bastion is ruled over by the Kyrian Covenant. Now, the Kyrian are the forebears of the Valkyr and the Spirit Healers and more. The Kyrian are ordered and purposeful, and the souls that find their way here, that are sent here by the Arbiter, are ones that had some natural calling in life to service in one form or another. But they don't come here fully ready to assume their ascended role as a Kyrian. Souls come with burdens, and a lot of what goes on in Bastion is meditation, reflection, understanding self through combat and other means to shed those burdens and be ready to ascend to an eternity of service in the afterlife as a Valkyr or a Spirit Healer or one of a couple of other paths. An example of a soul that might be familiar to us who ended up in Bastion is Uther, the Lightbringer. And we will be encountering him, among others, in our journey through Bastion. And of course, if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, Bastion is the zone that's playable here on the show floor today. So here is a look at some of the environments of Bastion, glowing, resplendent, very much distant from the dark and dreary images that might have been conjured up when you first heard the words Shadowlands. Because the land of death is not all darkness. There's a distinction there. Next, a bit of a darker place, the zone of Maldraxxus. So Maldraxxus, as initially defined in this concept, is ruled over by the Necrolord Covenant, and it reflects the heart of the Shadowlands' military might. The souls here defend the Shadowlands from external forces and wage war on the enemies of death. These are the forces that were called upon by the Lich King, by his servants Kel'Thuzad and others, and we've seen a piece of that. Now, while at a glance, okay, undead, rot, decay, this seems like, okay, these are all evil guys. That's not necessarily what Maldraxxus is about. While this power certainly can be used for evil, at its core really is more about just a relentless spirit, unyielding search and pursuit of power, strength, inward and outward. And an example of a soul that ended up in Maldraxxus is actually the warlord Draka, mother of Thrall, who, while certainly not an evil, wicked soul, was one who would never kneel, never bow before another. And she has actually ascended to a position of some prominence within Maldraxxus, as we will discover when we journey there. Let's take a look at how this is coming together. Now, if you think of Legion as the old Burning Crusade look and feel dialed up to 11, Maldraxxus is very much Eastern Plaguelands, the Scourge, and more, taken to the nth degree. This is the source of that power, and much more. Next, Ardenweald. Ardenweald is an enchanted fairy forest, and that was what we were setting out to create, and this concept by our environment team really helped define that look and the general vibe that we were going for. Now, Ardenweald is ruled over by the Night Fae, and we are familiar with the Emerald Dream, those of you who are druids, maybe more so than most. And if we think of the Emerald Dream as a reflection of the spring and the summer, part of nature's cycle, Ardenweald reflects autumn and winter. It's a place of rest, yes, of death, but also of preparation for eventual rebirth. Because the journey into the Shadowlands isn't necessarily a one-way journey. And spirits of nature are the ones who are called powerfully to Ardenweald, and most of them come here to rest and to prepare to serve the wilds once more. An example of a powerful, well-known soul who ended up in Ardenweald is actually the demigod Cenarius. When he fell before the axes of Grommash Hellscream and his band of felon-fused orcs, his soul passed into Ardenweald, where he rested and recovered and returned to serve the wilds in a time of need during the events of the Cataclysm. So here's a look at how that general, those concepts have been translated into in-world environments. As you look up in Ardenweald, you're looking at the underside of canopies of magical ancient trees that almost look like staring up at the night sky. But there are also some parts of Ardenweald that aren't faring quite as well, that also reflect some sorts of powers that we may have seen recently, especially for those of you who are playing Alliance in Battle for Azeroth, because Ardenweald is also deeply connected to the Drust, who come from the Land of Death. Fourth up, Revendreth. Revendreth is awesome. It's basically just a creepy Gothic zone, miasma, soaring castles, villages in their shadow, and terrors and horrors lurking around every corner. Revendreth is ruled over by the Venthyr. This is our fourth major covenant. And Revendreth, unlike the other realms, maybe isn't the place that you would want to go or hope to go as a soul passing into the Shadowlands. The souls that the Arbiter has sent to Revendreth over the years tend to be the ones that have some flaw, whether it's pride or some other problem that's kind of blocking them, that's hindering their ability to serve the Shadowlands in one of the other known paths. And they come to Revendreth to atone, to do penance for their misdeeds, and potentially to be redeemed, and to move on to one of the other realms, or perhaps not. Revendreth is not a particularly fun place to be, but it's an essential part of the engine of death that is the Shadowlands. An example of a soul that came here, and whom we will encounter in our journeys, is none other than Kael'thas Sunstrider. Who, after a setback or two, found his way to this dark land. So here we see, just sort of a look at the landscape, the silhouette of the spires that define the environment. This is one of my favorite zones. I can't wait to explore it. I can't wait for all of you to check it out. There are also parts of Revendreth where the light has actually broken through the clouds and seared the earth, and some are actually caged up here because exposure to the light does horrible, horrible things to many of the souls of this land. Okay, so I've used the word covenant a whole lot. What is a covenant? So a covenant is the ruling power of the Shadowlands. There are four major ones we're going to be encountering: the Kyrians in Bastion, the Necrolords in Maldraxxus, the Night Fae of Ardenweald, and the Venthyr of Revendreth, as described. Covenants are also really the #1 major feature of Shadowlands. I think in Battle for Azeroth, we had a few different smaller features. We had islands, we had the Heart of Azeroth, we had warfronts. Covenants are more like a garrison or an artifact in the sense of being what we call internally a build-around feature. They're integrated into every aspect of the game, and they're an essential part of your journey, your progression, your power, and more. Each of these covenants, as you encounter them in your journeys, will seek your aid, because you are a powerful, mighty hero who comes with some unique abilities, seeing as you actually are tethered to the land of the living, and you are coming alive from Azeroth, which we'll get to in a second. And of course, in exchange for this, each one of them offers access to their power and a variety of rewards. And so each of you will have to make a fateful choice. Which covenant will you join? Let's take a look at what that will mean for you. So a covenant entails multiple things. First off, each covenant has its own large narrative endgame arc. So in Battle for Azeroth, we had the Horde War campaign and the Alliance War campaign. In Shadowlands, we have 4 of those. Each one opens up at max level, depending on your choice, and will lead you through the world in different ways as you unravel the mysteries of the Shadowlands, but do so in pursuit of your Covenant's goals and working to empower them and thus yourself. Each Covenant also brings with it 2 active abilities. One of these is class-specific. It's a combat ability that will change your moment-to-moment gameplay. The other one is a universal ability that all members of that Covenant will share. And if you check out the demo here today for Bastion, you can see the Kyrian abilities for any given class and mess around with them. Next, Covenants bring with them an endgame progression system. There's a ritual known as soul binding, where as a member of a covenant, you can bond your soul to a powerful denizen of the Shadowlands, enhancing your abilities, unlocking new ones, and having a ton of customization there. At a glance, I know this sounds like, okay, this is the artifact system, this is the Heart of Azeroth for this expansion. In some ways, it builds upon lessons learned from both of those. First and foremost, there is no artifact power to grind. This is not a... Yeah. Because honestly, like, that was an essential starting point for us when
Welcome to Overwatch. What's next?
What's up, everyone? Long time no see. So I'm Jeff.
And I'm Aaron.
So Aaron's very humble. So how many WoW fans are here today?
Oh my God.
Okay. I'm not making this up. You can watch this on YouTube. Aaron is the gentleman who made Stormwind, Orgrimmar, Thunderbluff, Ironforge, Darnassus for World of Warcraft. And for those of you who are Overwatch fans, what is the best map in Overwatch? Aaron made King's Row. Okay.
Thank you for all of that. And that's not embarrassing at all.
No, not embarrassing at all. And he prefers to be called Aaron. And everyone's been pronouncing it wrong all these years. Aaron,
that's my mom. Yeah. Okay.
So, Overwatch 2, we're talking about it in detail now.
I'm so excited to talk to all of you about Overwatch 2. We said it at opening ceremonies. It's so hard not to be able to talk about it with friends and family and actually use the name Overwatch 2. But here we go.
There it is.
You want to start with push?
You start. You kick it off.
Okay, so we've built a lot of game modes for Overwatch over the years. Things like Junkenstein's or Capture the Flag or Lucio Ball. But those have always been featured in the arcade. Push is the first game mode that we've released since launch that is what we call a core game mode. And a core game mode is something that you will be able to play in quick play. It's something that you'll play in competitive. And it's also something that the Overwatch League is going to play. Let's take a look at a video that kind of goes into it in a little more detail.
Cool. Yeah, let's check it out.
Okay, so the push map that we're showing today takes place in Toronto, Canada. Yes. The objective of push is for both teams to escort a robot into enemy territory. The team that pushes it the furthest before time expires wins the match. That's the robot.
Who is ready to push? I am!
As you stand near the robot, it will start moving towards the enemy's base.
Until May gets conked.
Yeah, exactly. As the robot moves, it pushes a barricade marker further into enemy territory. The further the marker goes, the higher your team's score gets. As it hits a checkpoint, your team will unlock a forward spawn point.
This looks like a nice spot.
He's a little itchy.
Yeah, I love this guy. As he's pushing the barricade marker, the robot moves slower.
Okay, other
But
direction.
when he's not pushing the marker, he moves a lot faster. This allows teams to make up lost ground really quickly in the mode. Okay, so
Moving the barricade.
May needs to escort the robot further into enemy territory than Brigitte's team did. And if she can escort it all the way till the end of the map, it'll result in an instant victory for her and her team. Like this.
Victory.
Yeah, I would say so far internally, we don't have a lot of the maps go all the way to the end, which is a good thing. Most of the maps are like more back and forth.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the design values that we had for push is it's more interesting to have that robot move back and forth across the map. And if you look at the map, you can see that it's mirrored. The geometry is mirrored from one side to the other. It's a symmetrical map. And the game mode itself is a symmetrical game mode. What that means is each team has the same objective that they need to accomplish in order to win the match. This is similar to something like Control. Control, both teams are vying for one control point in the middle of the map. What I think is really cool about Push, though, is as the robot moves back and forth across the map, the team fights that are everything in these symmetrical modes happen all across the map, in contrast to Control, where a lot of them happen at the control point in the middle of the map. If you look at this next shot, you can see that the path that winds its way through Toronto in this map is really windy. That red line illustrates the path that the robot takes through Toronto. What this means is that there's a lot of different shortcuts and connections in order to connect different parts of the path. This makes the game mode really flanky. And heroes that you might not see in some of our other game modes, or you might not see as prominently, such as Reaper and Tracer, are really, really powerful in this game mode. Internally in our testing, we typically use different comps in Push than we do in all the other game modes. And I can't wait for you guys to play it. You can play it on the show floor today and see what sort of team compositions you guys create.
Cool. Let's take a look at Toronto a little bit. Why don't we talk about some of our values from a world building standpoint?
Yeah, so when we build maps, we always like to take players on a journey all across the world. And we like to visit unique and exciting and exotic locations. And when we build them, we try to make them fit the ideal or the fantasy of what we've always imagined that place in the world to be. With Toronto, it's the red maple trees, it's ice rinks, a curling arena, a statue of a hockey player.
Tons of hockey. Very multicultural. So Toronto was a blast to work on. But what's very exciting for our players to know is that there's going to be all new PvP maps, not just for Push, which will have multiple new maps with it. It won't just be Toronto. But every current core game mode in Overwatch is going to get Overwatch 2 maps.
Yeah, we'll get multiple maps for every game mode. And I think this is so exciting because the game, when Overwatch 2 launches, it's going to feel like such a new experience. I know we're going to talk a lot about the cooperative missions up here. But even on the PvP side of the game, having a bunch of new maps to play on is going to make this feel like a totally new experience for Overwatch 2 players.
Yeah, let's check it out. We've got some footage here. Now, I have to warn everybody, all of this is work in progress. We are hard at work on Overwatch 2 right now. So none of the maps that you're seeing are finished. Not even Toronto, not even Rio out on the show floor today. None of them are finished. They're all going to be that much cooler when we're done. We're also looking forward to getting a lot of play testing, a lot of feedback, but you can see some of the locations that we're really excited to explore. And many of these maps we've been playing for a while now and having a really good time.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about making maps for the Overwatch universe is that a lot of the people on our team come from locations all across the world. So we have people from Brazil working on a Rio de Janeiro map, people from Sweden working on Gothenburg, people from Toronto actually working on Toronto, and they're able to bring all of their love and passion and experience in these places to bear when they're actually building the map.
Yeah. So we know that you all love new maps. There are a lot of new maps coming with Overwatch 2, a lot of new locations, places that you want to see, like Gothenburg. There's a couple of heroes from Gothenburg we think would be really cool. But it's time to talk about story missions. So story has been requested from us a lot. Like, we get a lot of comments. And we think it's awesome. Like, you have all followed the story so far. You've been following it for some time, and you're ready for more. And we are ready to deliver. Now, I'm going to do a quick recap on like where the story's at right now. So obviously, this is since the original game. The original game started with Overwatch being shut down. Overwatch was this international peacekeeping force. The UN issued this thing called the Petrus Act, and that shut Overwatch down. Then, because of the absence of Overwatch and the heroism that they brought to the world, new threats were able to arise, and all sorts of bad stuff started to happen. There was the uprising in London. There was Talon. Like, Talon really became much more of a threat and gained in power in this sort of new vacuum that we had. But our good buddy Winston had the idea to initiate the recall. And what the recall is about is he knows it's illegal to reach out to all of the Overwatch agents, the former Overwatch agents, and basically say to them, hey, it's time to get back together. Like, now's the time. The world needs us now more than ever. So then we had a series of animated shorts, and it was really fun to explore these and kind of go on this journey to see how different heroes reacted to the recall. There was, for example, in Honor and Glory, you know, Reinhardt, in the most steadfast way, said, I must answer the call, while Brigitte was sort of begging him not to at a certain point. Whereas May, who was working at Eco Point Antarctica, you know, she wasn't necessarily a hero. She was more of just a scientist at the time. But Winston's recall really inspired her into heroism, which was great. And then there was that last BlizzCon we showed Reunion with McCree. And McCree's very strange reaction. Like, okay, Winston called me back, but I'm going to bring Echo back instead.
Yeah. McCree kind of pieced out at that moment.
Yeah.
Who knows where the guy went, what he's doing around the world, but I have a feeling we'll be seeing more of him.
We might see more of McCree. I didn't see him in Zero Hour. The name of the movie we showed today, by the way, is Zero Hour, the Paris attacks. So I didn't see him there. So I'm wondering what's up with McCree. So Zero Hour, that brings us up to today. So Paris is under attack. It's Null Sector again, but it's not the Null Sector from back in King's Row. This is an all-out attack on the entire world. The good news is, joining Winston in Paris were some of the members of Overwatch. Some responded to the call. They're back. They're ready for action. But the world is attacked, and the world is under strife, and you, as a player, are going to get to take the place of our heroes and see what the next chapter holds for Overwatch. So we really hope you play that demo today. It will show you just kicking off where we're at. Now, the coolest part about getting to do story missions is something that we hear often from you is that you love our cinematics. Thank you. They're made by a group called Story and Franchise Development. We get to work with some of the most talented animators, producers, directors. We're really, really lucky to work with them. Every one of our story missions will get a cinematic introduction, and we'll get a cinematic outro. So you'll experience that. You'll see that in the Rio de Janeiro demo that we have. Now, I've got to give a warning to everybody. The outro is a placeholder for the actual movie. So I will just say this. I'm going to give a spoiler right
Oh, no.
So at the very end, what's May's famous line at the very end? Lucio! Lucio doesn't actually die. So, okay. That's all you need to know. But we're excited for the cinematic storytelling that we get to do. You finally get to spend a lot of time with these heroes. So in a story mission, it's very curated by us. Like, we get to pick which heroes you're going to play in a story mission because we're trying to tell a particular story. So in Rio, for example, we've got May, we've got Reinhardt, Lucio, and Tracer. Those are the heroes that you can adventure with.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about story missions, and even with hero missions, all of the cooperative gameplay that we're trying to do, is one of our goals